What's going on, folks? It's your boy Javier Javier with the Javier Javier Show. Make sure you say it twice. I got a special guest and a special friend, Marc Meltzer, recording live, and we're going to talk about Judaism today. So I'm going to let Marc introduce himself, tell you a little bit about himself, and we're going to get this conversation going. What's going on, Marc?
What's up? What's up? How are you?
I'm good. Good. How are you?
Good. Well, I just turned 50 years old in January. I've been married 15 years this August to my beautiful wife, Amy. I have 3 beautiful, wonderful children, Yosef, Rachel, and Shoshana, and a dog, Oreo. And I am a combat sports coach that specializes in striking techniques from the arts of Muay Thai and Dutch-style kickboxing. And I have a very strong Jewish identity.
So I never kind of understood this. Like, why is it that if your mother's Jewish, you're Jewish, but if your father's Jewish, it doesn't necessarily make you Jewish? Like, what exactly is going on with that?
Well, Judaism sort of looks at it this way. On one hand, usually it's the mother that raises the children, but more than that, in the kind of a crazy world that we live in, children are born to women. And the only way to know who the parents are of the child is the mother actually gives birth. So when she gives birth, you know that that child belongs to that woman, and therefore they go by the identity of the mother, because you never know who the father is, right?
That's interesting. So are you kind of like optimistic, pessimistic? Like, what's your feelings? Like, do you think that you're going to find what you're looking for when it comes to your heritage, or are you kind of like on the fence whether you should get your hopes high or not?
Well, I'll say this. It's a little bit of both. I am pessimistic through the paper trail aspect of it because I was adopted. My biological mother, who I found, was also adopted. We are finding out now that the birth mother that's listed on her official birth certificate, which she legally got unsealed, is not the right woman. How do we know this? Well, through DNA and matching and everything that's been going on, we've concluded that the probability of the woman that's listed as her mother is highly unlikely not to be her mother. So in a paper trail aspect, it's a little bit of pessimism, but with all the advances that they have in DNA, it's optimism, because it clearly identifies me as her biological son, and it throws together a lot of cousins and first cousins and relatives. So we're able to sort of figure out a lot, but not everything. So we're still working on it, and we're working on it now. So we'll see what happens.
So let's do this. Let's say that I've never heard anything about Judaism. I'm completely a blank slate. I don't know anything about Judaism. What exactly would you tell me, starting off, if I came to ask you about Judaism? What would you tell me?
Judaism is a culture, and that it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. There are Jews from Spain that have traditions. There are Jews that, went through the European countries, and they have a different culture. And there are Russian Jews, and there are Jews from all over the world now. What really brings them together is a lot of the holidays, which we can all celebrate together. And the idea behind all of it is trying to bring God into this world. So, we have this world, and the way to realize a Jewish life is to bring God into it by doing what he asks. We try and elevate everything that we try and do by saying a blessing over it, trying to, but these things are experiences. It's kind of like watching somebody eat good food at a restaurant. You just really can't taste the food unless you experience it. So Judaism is definitely a very experiential kind of way of life. And by just talking about it, it's a little difficult to sort of convey it. But if you understand that, then, and you understand you're trying to bring God into the world, then, you kind of get a little bit better of a handle on it.
See, like, the unique thing about Judaism is, like, you could be an atheist and still be Jewish. And I mean, Judaism is a very welcoming religion, and it's also a people. So exactly what makes Judaism, like, so unique to where atheists like myself could practice it?
Atheists can practice Judaism because, a lot of the messages aren't necessarily God related in nature in some ways. Of course, Passover is about the idea of, one group of people being enslaved by another group of people, and that emancipation, it can speak a lot to a lot of different cultures. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to believe in God to appreciate the idea that, slavery is wrong, or, the idea of slavery is something that we don't want.
So exactly what kind of Jew are you? Would you consider yourself Orthodox or conservative? Like, what kind of Judaism do you subscribe to?
Uh, it's hard for me to define what kind of Jew I am. I would say that at the end of the day that I'm a seeker. So, you can find the answers to a lot of questions, not solely in this direction. There could be elements to your answers in different directions too in Jewish life. If you're trying to have a Jewish life. So you want to look for Jewish sources to your answers in Jewish life. So it's really a wide range of stuff, but I would say that I'm a seeker.
Yeah, so I want you to explain to me kind of like, is kosher kind of like a health thing? Is it something that's just purely religious? Like, exactly what is it about kosher that makes it important in Judaism? And, you know, should other people practice it? Is it something that's just for health benefits? Explain that for me.
I would say that the kosher lifestyle is identifying really what you're trying to eat and saying a blessing over it. And that it is a balance, that in the sense that you're allowed to eat things, but not everything. And creating these limits and these boundaries, what you shouldn't go by, that can kind of transcend into a lot of things in your life, especially with eating. And when you are eating things, the idea is to say a blessing over it and elevate it. And you are consuming this food, and it's becoming a part of you and your body. And what do you do with yourself and your body? You go out into the world and you do good things or bad things. So if you're doing good things, that's elevating the food, right? That's doing something the food could never, ever do. Whether it's, strawberries or kosher steak, what you're doing is you're taking the food into yourself and you're doing God's will and you're elevating everything. So that's a big reason for kashrut right there.
So you're Jewish, and there's a lot of people out there who aren't Jewish and don't know much about Judaism. So what exactly is the process that it takes to actually become Jewish? If you're not Jewish at the moment and you want to become Jewish, what is the process like? Explain that for me.
So it's hard for me to understand what the process of becoming a Jew is like. I know that when I found my biological mother, she was raised in a Jewish house, but she wasn't necessarily Jewish herself. We didn't know because she was adopted too. And I was Jewish all my life. I grew up Jewish. So it's very difficult for me to sort of see what the process to become a Jew is like, because I never had the perspective a non-Jew had. You know what I mean? So it's a little difficult to sort of pinpoint what that is. I've always had these kind of views, and it's all comfortable for me. So of course I can challenge all my views, but at the end of the day, what do I really feel comfortable subscribing to? So it's going to be a worldview that I have that, influences everything that I do. So it's hard for me to see what someone else doesn't see. What I can say is when I see someone who doesn't see what Judaism is, I can see what they don't see and tell them what that is. That's a little bit different. That's why it can be done, but it's really difficult to become Jewish. It's not, they don't, even though our numbers are down, they don't want anyone and everyone to just become Jewish. It's not an easy religious lifestyle. It's not very easy. There's a lot of holidays, there's a lot of rituals, there's a lot of things that you have to do. It's, you got to be committed. So, you go through it.
So here in America, it's kind of like we got Christianity is a big thing, and there's different denominations here and there, and a lot of times these denominations, they go at it with one another. And I'm going to ask you, like, what exactly is it with Judaism? Does Judaism kind of have the same dynamic where there's different sects or different denominations of Judaism and they kind of go at it with each other? Like, what's the deal? Does that exist or does it not?
Well, they do and they don't. They do differ in what to do about Judaism and Torah itself. If you believe that the Torah came from people, it's going to change how you approach the things the Torah is telling you to do, as opposed to if you believe that it came from God. So if God is telling me to do something, well, I kind of got to do it. If people are telling me, right, then what do we have? We have any kind of political system you can think of. You can have totalitarian, you can have, it's definitely not a democracy, it's just different. So, people will pick and choose the things that they do in Jewish life a lot more, with a lot less reverence than if you believe it came from God.
So in certain types of religions, there is this thing where if you leave the faith, like you either outcast or you're an apostate, or basically you can't come back, or you basically, sometimes it can be death. And does Judaism follow anything of that sort? Like, is Judaism one of those things where you can't leave the faith, and if you do leave the faith, X, Y, and Z will happen? Or is it just like, hey, you can leave, you can come back? Like, exactly what it is that's unique to Judaism?
Well, okay, so if you're born into Judaism, you really can't leave. You can deviate from the practices, you can reject the religion, you can be an atheist basically, and you can always come back, just like your family,
So originally, Christianity was an offshoot of Judaism. And I believe that, it started off with Jews and it translated into a whole new religion. And basically, Jews still believe that the Messiah has not come and the Messiah is yet to come. So are you, as a Jew, are you still waiting for the Messiah to come? Are Jews still waiting on the promised Messiah, the one that Christians claim to already have happened, but I guess Jews deny that? Like, what's the deal with that?
Yes, Jews are waiting for the Messiah every day, every moment. It's in a lot of our prayers, morning and night. It's in a lot of our rituals. It's in a lot of what we're doing, and it's also in the reality that we're living in. The Jewish people are scattered throughout the world right now, and the idea is that we want to be ushered back into the land of Israel, and that's what the Messiah is meant to do. So, do I want to just pick up and leave and go to Israel right now? I don't. I love being in this country. I'd feel really out of place in another country. I guess I would if I absolutely had to. I have a lot of friends that picked up and left, and they're living in Israel now, and their Jewish life is very easy. So it's a question. Do we? Not right now, but yeah. And we are waiting for the Messiah, and that would be a pretty good excuse to pick up and go.
So what exactly is so uncompelling about the idea of Christianity? Like, what about Christian theology or the history of Christianity or the Christ story? Like, why is Christianity uncompelling to you, if I had to sum it up?
So I grew up with Judaism. Had I grown up Christian, I'd probably be a pretty good Christian, you know. But because I grew up the way I did, uh, there was a point where I wanted to really investigate what it was all about, and I did. And I would say it's more of a choice. And you can't really say this family is better than that family, and so therefore I'm with this family. It's like, this is who I am, and I can't really knock Christianity so much. I mean, I can poke holes at it; it can poke holes at me, but I'm not. I'm not really. I want to be more of who I am. So I feel that God has put me in this situation, that my biological mother probably has no Jewish background, but she was raised in a Jewish household. She put me for adoption up in a Jewish family services, and I came through into a Jewish family. And I think before my biological mother, there was no Judaism in their lives. So it's really kind of more divine providence in my thinking that I am where I am, and I want to embody that. I don't want to reject everything and just go wherever I want willy-nilly. I want to sort of see who I am. And like, I grew up this way, so a lot of these things really make sense to me on a very deep level because it's been with me all my life. So
As a Jew right now, like, you're not a Christian, but you're Jewish, and Christianity kind of has that Judaic Christian values kind of thing going on. So what exactly, like, could you see yourself being Christian? Is it a possibility? Do you see yourself being close enough to say, hey, I could be a Christian?
I would say I'm not Christian because of heritage and tradition, but as I grew up, it really became a choice. I mean, I've seen some Christianity, and I've experienced a lot of the people and everything. And I think being a Christian in this country would be a lot easier than being Jewish. I just sort of want to be more true to myself, and this is where I was put, and this is how I feel a lot more. How do you say it? I feel a lot more established, more grounded, that I'm pursuing the paths that I'm pursuing.
So as a Jew, have you been to Israel yet? And please, like, explain to me what's kind of like the conflict between the Palestinians and the Jewish people. Kind of explain what that whole ordeal is about, and or have you ever been to Israel, for the matter of fact?
What is at the root of the Israel-Palestinian conflict? And I feel it's such a volatile thing. A lot of it comes down to, I feel, a religious conversation, that in Islam, in the Quran, it references that their prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven through a certain holy city that was described, that has a description that fits Jerusalem. Doesn't say he went there from Jerusalem, but it says that he went to heaven on I guess, a ladder. And so that's their claim to the land. And they've been fighting for it ever since. And, I feel we've been there before all of that, and we have a claim to it too. So that's how I feel.
So this is a unique thought that I had, because I know that a lot of people say it's fighting over land. It could be a lot of religious reasons on why people don't want to let the land go. So my question to you is, if another Muslim country offered Israel to switch places with their land, would Israel take that deal, or would Israel say, not doing it, we're staying here? Like, what would be the reasons? And, explain that to me.
So I have a different take on it. I had this idea in my head, and I still do, why not, that if push came to shove, why wouldn't we as Jews in the United States of America exchange houses with the Palestinians? Why, you know, I mean, we want to be there. They just, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. They want to be there too, but would they give up their lands, all of them? If I would give up my house, if I could live in a house of comparable value in Israel, if my neighbors were Jews too, you know, that we could reclaim the land like that. The great American Palestinian house swap. Why not? I don't know.
Okay, last question. Do you take the story of Adam and Eve literal in Genesis? Is that something literal, or is it metaphysical, or is it fiction? What is your Jewish perspective on the story of Adam and Eve?
Well, you know, we can go back as far as we want. We only know so much. I don't think there's any way to really archaeologically dig in and get Adam and Eve and say, see, this is what happened, you know? So we have to take, so, you know, when historical truth probably started happening the way we know it after the flood. Maybe there was a lot of flood stories. The fact that it covered the entire earth, well, maybe for Noah, it you know, encompassed the entire earth, but there are a lot of flood stories. So maybe after the Tower of Babel, I think Abraham grew up in the Tower of Babel, which is why, you know, he became more, you know, the kind of leader for the Israelites that he was. So, you know, looking back at the Adam and Eve story and the creation story, could they have happened? They could have in certain ways, you know. God creates this ultimate environment for humanity, Adam and Eve, and said, you can eat anything you want, you can do whatever you want, you're cool, just don't touch my tree. And that kind of thing gives you this idea that it's not your garden, you know. You can, you know, it's like when a parent gives a present to a child. Not only do you want the child to enjoy the present, but you want the child to appreciate where the present comes from, you know? So how does God do that? He puts in a tree and says, don't eat this tree, respect my tree. And, you know, of course they don't, because humans aren't humans. We do what we do. And, you know, the idea, was there a snake that came up and was talking and now he doesn't have legs and arms and can't talk? You know, you could take a look at that and say, you know, well, is it a snake or is it an imposter? You know, the people who, you know, try and tell us who we are, and they say, you know, this is what the world means, and, you know, you go along with it, and, you know, the trouble that you get into by subscribing to other people's sort of vision and twisting of words. And, you know, for me, I look at that and say, could that happen? I think it happens all the time. I think it always happens. And that's why one of the reasons why some of these stories are so powerful is not that it happened then, it's always happening. You know, you see it when you have kids, man. When you have kids, you'll know that, like, you want them to appreciate the things that they get, and you want them to appreciate where they came from. And, you know, you'll see that they're going to make mistakes and they're going to make the wrong decisions. And, you know, you know these things, and you see it happening right before your very eyes. And it's enriching, you know, and you guide the kids and all that stuff. But, you know, as far as Adam and Eve, did it happen? I don't know. I don't care in that kind of a sense. Like, did it historically happen? And if it didn't, does that shake my faith or any of that? No, none of that matters. Shakespeare was noted for being able to describe the way things were at that day and time so vividly, and he was able to portray it and convey it, and none of it happened, you know? So, you know, why was he considered such an incredible playwright and all this stuff? It's because, you know, what he put into everything, he was able to convey to the people. And it didn't matter if it happened or not, they're universal truth. That's all. I don't think anything really became historically real in the way that you and I know it until probably the Tower of Babel, maybe afterwards, after the flood, after all that stuff. I mean, do I believe the entire earth was encased in water? I don't know. There are a lot of flood stories. There was, there's the Epic of Gilgamesh. Is that right? And then, the Noah story. And like, I think
Yeah.
some of these stories are these lessons that, that are not, they weren't just made up, man. I mean, they're thousands of years old, and the strong, I read a paper where they took the Epic of Gilgamesh and they put it against the Noah story, and the Noah story was a stronger story. You know what I mean? So it's not like it's not there. It's just, this is a stronger, better story. So that's probably why it made it in. There are some interesting things about Egypt. There was a papyrus that was found that it was an Egyptian resident, and he was complaining about the plagues, and he wrote about it, and they found it. So I mean, but it doesn't. For me, it doesn't necessarily matter, because the stories have such depth and truth to it. Shakespeare, none of that happened. You know what I mean? But you learn a lot from Shakespeare. So was it true? Okay, so it's true. Yeah, okay, so it's not true. But it's helping my life today, and that's...
So it's more, whether it's true or not, metaphysically, these are good values and truths that transcend whether or not it happened. It transcends.
You gotta cut a lot of stuff out too. You gotta cut out the idea that, all right, well, do you want to spend your time looking to see if it's J or P saying it, or what group is like ripping it apart and saying what it is and what's not? You're taking away from all the messages that it's trying to convey. So if you're going to learn it, my approach was, all right, I'm going to learn it on its own terms, and that way I'll understand what it says. And I feel like it's been a lot better for me. I don't want to turn myself into a skeptic. It's not the point. I mean.
Yeah, definitely. So how long have you known Michael? Michael is the one that brought us together from the Dogma Debate show that I met him. How long have y'all known each other?
Since 88 or so. So, I moved from Bangor, Maine to Marblehead, and, I had a lot of different types of groups of friends, and he was one of the friends. And we hung out a bunch of times, and it was fun. It was cool. He was a good guy. And, cool. But it's funny. And I know we're going over time and everything. You can cut it up all you want, but he seems to be saying that he was very political for a lot of his life, and I wasn't. And so, you know what I mean? Maybe that was why we were such good friends, because I never really investigated or looked into it or anything. And it seems like people had these political positions for a very long time, and I really didn't care, man. I didn't care until relatively last maybe 15, 20 years or so.
So I brought that up just to say you and Michael are the ones who created the Polite Power movement on Facebook. And I wanted to bring that up because I'm a part of that group also. So any of my listeners who want great conversation and want to actually get engaged with, conversations like we're having here, I highly recommend that you go to the Polite Power movement on Facebook, the group, join it and join the conversation, because I think
comment, because there's not too many people commenting. It can be a little bit like crack, because that's what's happening a lot of the time. So
definitely,
the more voices, the better.
Yeah, true.
And I would just say, a lot of people like to attack me, and then if you attack me, then I gotta attack you back, and then it's really, I just want to dispense with all of that and talk about the issues. And there are some people who are way smarter than me on there that I really do appreciate what they have to say. And who knows? I'm actually there to learn, because if there's something that I'm thinking that's really wrong, you'll catch me in those moments where I'm the strongest and be like, you know, that's not right, and this is why, and I can absorb that, and I might be able to change my view on something. So
definitely. Well, I appreciated this conversation. I think I learned a lot about Judaism, and I think my viewers will really appreciate, you know, me tackling this issue the way that I do. So I know a lot of times that I'm usually giving my input on what I think bad about religion, but not actually sitting down, letting somebody tell me what their religion stands for, what it's about, how it's helped them, how it's changed their lives.
I was prepared for this whole other thing. I had all these notes, and then I got my books. I put in all my books, most of my books here, and like you want to talk about God? Let's go. We can do that.
Oh, it might come.
Talk about Palestine a little bit, but
yeah, it might come.
I was waiting for aliens, and I was waiting for dinosaurs, and I was waiting.
This is new for everybody because they like, oh, Javier is being like just learning, just sitting back, learning. And I'm always trying to learn. I know sometimes it may come off as I'm just trying to push back, but I do want my guests to get out what it is they actually believe without straw manning them or creating positions that they don't currently hold and attacking them. So, you know, I appreciate you coming to the show, and I think we should do this again at some point.
I was very nervous, and I appreciate that you're being a good host and making me feel a little bit more comfortable. Definitely. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Not a problem. So this is when I make my outro. So they came, they heard, they saw. Now run. Tell them we said it. And if they ask for us by name, make sure you say it twice. This is the Javier Javier Show.